Thank you. Good evening, everybody, and a Happy New Year. This is the Township Board Business Meeting, first of the year, with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and for all.
Additions, deletions board.
Supervisor,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion to remove consent agenda number 7, which is approve, process, and distribute payments through February 3rd.
Support. Just a little background why we're.
Yeah, that we do when we don't second meeting during the month, since we're going to be meeting 26th, 23rd, then we'll just go through the normal payment approval process.
Any that's pretty straightforward. Any hearing none. We have a motion to delete consent agenda item number 7, approval to process and distribute payments through 3rd. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That is deleted, so we're down to 9. Anything else?
I would like to make a motion to amend the discussion to include discussion of Broadcasting Commission meetings as well.
Second.
Oh, yeah, yep, that's fine, makes sense. The way a discussion item is stated right now, it just pertains to boards, so that makes sense. Any other discussion on that? All right, then we have a motion to amend our discussion item to include committee meetings. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, that is so amended. Okay. All right, I just don't write as fast. All right, with that, assuming there's nothing else that's going to be added or deleted, I would make a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Or
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, so our agenda has a deletion of an agenda item and the addition of commission meetings to our discussion item. Very good. All right, I have no formal presentations today, so we'll move on to public comment.
Approve the amended agenda.
We did.
We did?
It's part of the, that's part of the action item.
Just did it.
Not a formal, it's not a formal presentation. Yeah, we just did. So, comment, 3 minutes on agenda items.
My name is Kevin, Parke Lane, Grosse Ile. I'd like to mention I would like to thank Trustee Porcarelli for adding the item to televise and record the Township Board's work and adding that to this evening's agenda, discussion items. And as part of, I attended the DDA meeting at the end of December, and that meeting is not recorded and is not recorded or visually recorded. And I would like to ask Supervisor, he listed a number of reasons that he did not want to and record the Downtown Development Authority's meetings. And my question, or also, major changes are taking Macomb Street and providing islanders, and particularly those people who live on Macomb and plan, only seems like a common courtesy. I'd like to thank all the businesses that are on Macomb. I'd like to thank DDA Director Ross for putting a item on his to consider televising the meetings. And I'd like to thank all the DDA members who all work tirelessly to make our island and Macomb Street a better place. So, Mr. Budney, at some point, when your questions, would you tell us why we can't have that televised?
When we get discussion item. And oh, I can't. Kathy's back there.
Kathy Walker, 26051 Thorpe Court. First of all, Happy New Year to the board,
Happy New Year.
to everybody in the audience, and to the people watching. Years ago, when I was in the Cable Commission, they had voted on this. Not for study sessions, but for all meetings. And the only thing that they wanted to televise was Duncan's and Joe's. And then we went through that because Duncan, we said, okay, but this has been voted on a number of times. I think it just kind of falls through the cracks. Just not something new.
We
it's
just
been-
voted on it
Yeah.
a year ago.
Yeah,
Or, I mean,
voted on
I'm sorry,
repeatedly, you know.
2
for-
years ago,
yeah, for
before
years.
we
Just-
started here.
It's
Yeah,
nothing new.
it can be looked at every year.
Yeah, good. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else? Mr. Bill. How are you, sir?
I remember years ago, it was long before I got married, but there was this one lady who loved to watch Mr. Bill, and of course he's getting balked. And never mind, it was made me laugh. You can criticize my lack of self-control.
Name and address, please.
Oh, Bill Heil. I live on East River here on Grosse Ile. I've got in here late. I apologize for that, but I believe we're talking about this concept of public communication or getting it televised. I'm in favor of that because I think there's a public good to be served by being every alternative for people to become aware that is possible. With more people sitting here, it doesn't always happen. That's one side of this. I can also remember times when the room was full and it didn't make any difference anyway. Look at it from a number of viewpoints. But there's a principle there that merits being up. And I think that's worth expense. And I believe that's what's sitting here, and it makes it very clear what I think in short order. I mean, I know we can debate on whether it can be afforded. I also believe there's a way. And that's it. I've got some candy, okay?
Thank you.
No, I mean, there's some more. I mean, not as much. I'm sorry, people were talking about different things here.
Yes.
No,
Anyway, yeah.
Stop guys off the meeting, so we don't want to do that.
Thank Anyone else? Good evening, Mr. Zelasko.
And good evening and Happy New Year to the board. Z.
Good year.
Blauvelt. I also would like to endorse the issue. I've heard many comments from this board on the importance of transparency. this discussion issue that has come up no-brainer. I think the cost is minimal on this, in my opinion, and it endorses communication, and I would very much like to see it, and you bringing it up for discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have one? Yeah. Please go.
All right, my name is Greg Karmazin, homeowner at 21228 East River Road. I have a comment about the recording and broadcasting of Township Board of Trustees special meetings and study sessions, authored by Trustee Joe Porcarelli. I support Trustee Porcarelli's proposal to record all Township Board special meetings and study sessions. I believe it is very important to record Township Board special meetings and study sessions because these proceedings often feature the deliberation building of the Township Board that leads to action items being considered by the Board during subsequent business meetings. It's my understanding that Trustee Debusay posted commentary on his Facebook page to publicly state support for Trustee proposal to record and broadcast all Township Board meetings, while also interest in this action being expanded to all Township Commission meetings if feasible. I commend Trustee Debusay for advocating this position, as actions of commissioners are also often the basis for subsequent by the Township Board. I strongly believe the public is entitled to see a complete record of how it makes decisions. It is not always feasible for islanders to attend public meetings in person at Township Hall. Recording and broadcasting these proceedings greatly helps to expand citizen awareness while also enhancing training and accountability in local government. I hope the Township Board will approve the recommendations of Trustee Porcarelli and Trustee Debusay as soon as possible. Thank you for consideration comments tonight.
That's all. Thank you, Brian/Greg. Anyone else? Seeing none, public comment is closed, and we'll move to the consent agenda. Native.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to make a motion to consent agenda 22-064, which consists of the following. The minutes of the December 2022 regular board meeting, check registers dated through 30th, 2022, a board of resignation, board of review reappointment, board of review appointment, and another board appointment. The 2020 Board of Review Income and Asset Threshold Guidelines, the 2023 March Board of Review meals for Grosse Ile residents, and the contract approval for Grosse Ile Airport.
Thank you. Any comments on the?
Yes.
Yes.
Would just like to, I know it's not meant to do this way, but I'd like to thank Carol for her service on the Board of Review. She's a former deputy of the township and administrative assistant to a number of supervisors in the past, and I wish her well in her retirement. And I would also like to congratulate Duncan Murdoch, Lenny Putzeris, and Susie Armiak for stepping up and appointed to the Board of Review. So thank you.
Good comments. Thank you. Now I don't have to say that.
Teamwork.
Anyone else? Seeing none, we have a motion to approve consent 22-064, which is minutes of the December 12th, 2022 regular meeting, the check register dated December 30th, 2022, a Board of Review resignation, a Board of Review reappointment, a review appointment, another Board of Review appointment, the 23 Board of Review Income and Asset Threshold Guidelines, the 2023 March Board of Review mail-in appeals for Grosse Ile residents, and a contract amendment approval for Heil Airport. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. That amended consent agenda passes. All right. We have two action items. David, if you...
Based recommendation from the Grosse Ile Department of Public Services Commission and Ile Township Engineers, excuse me, Grosse Ile Town Board hereby awards a contract with Sorensen Company LLC at a cost of $741,000 for various capital improvements at the Grosse wastewater treatment plant. Included within the approval is the authorization of a 15% contingency, making the authorized project total $8,442,150.
Support. David?
I think so. Heil's going to make his presentation, and this is the EO, the capital improvement program for the wastewater treatment plant, and its consent order AAC 000023, and so Heil is going to run through a presentation on the work involved in.
$8,042,150.
Good evening, Happy New Year. Okay, this presentation will be lengthy or it could be abbreviated, so I'll leave it up to how long you want to stay here. Every bullet item could be expanded upon, but I think I'm going to present the brief presentation. If you have any questions at any point on an item, please let me know and I will stop and expand on it. This is the improvement ACO number AACO-000, which is the improvement at the wastewater treatment plant to meet the ACO requirements. And the ACO, again, is a administrative consent that Township entered with DEQ, then Eagle, now the treatment plant. Brief history and background. We start with the construction of the sewer system. The sewer system construction started in the early 20s as a combined system, sanitary and storm in one pipe, sewage disposal. The main sewer interceptor and the wastewater treatment plant construction happened in approximately 1965. The sewer separation through a grant from the was done in the late 70s, and that separated the storm sewers from the system. Sewer repairs and infiltration and flow removal started since 1994, and it continued, but again, the rate not enough to prevent Eagle from coming back, or DEQ then for the township, and having them enter into an administrative consent order. That's because of the frequent overflows that were taking place. So that administrative consent order was entered into the township in 2001. As a result, we had to meet some compliance issues. So what happened is ACO. I'll get it for you if you want. No, it's okay. The ACO helped the township secure a state revolving fund from the state to undertake some improvements like inflow removal of inflow sources, sewer lining throughout the island, and rehabilitation throughout the island. Also, it covered funding the capital program, which consisted of the north-south interceptor and redundant sewer that we ended up building. And I don't know if you all remember, it took place along the road and up Thoroughfare all the way to Church and all the way to Horsemill also. That provided a redundant sewer whereby anytime we had overflow of existing interceptors, the overflow went into the redundant sewer and ended up coming to the plant. Part of that rehabilitation program or capital improvement program was the construction of 1.5 million gallon retention basin at the treatment plant also, and that pump station associated with it. As we completed that program, we had to certify whether it was effective, so we did what we call a project certification, PPC. And in the process of analyzing the effective work, we found out that the transport system was great. It worked out as intended. Anytime we had overflow in the sewer system, it ended up at the plant. When it got to the plant, the treatment plant couldn't handle it. So the retention basin was adequate to meet the intended policy that DEQ imposed on the township during heavy rainfall events. And most of that because of saturated grounds and snow melts and rainfall events that the system in general. So because of that, to do another system evaluation to find out what could be done to improve the capacity and resolve these overflow issues. So in 2011, the township retained OHM, Orchard Hills and McClimate advisors to come in and analyze the system and see what could be done to get it to meet the requirements by Eagle. So did I skip? No. Okay. In 2012 and 2013, we conducted flow and data collection system to find out where the sources of this infiltration inflow are, what's causing all of this flow to come to the plant. Then OHM conducted what we call a hydric model recalibration, where they just superimposed rain events to see how the system is going to behave under certain rainfall conditions. And as of those analyses that they performed, they were able to design hydrograph meeting the MDEQ SSO policy, which after submittal to DEQ accepted. The resulting analysis was just to figure out what could be done to just make sure the system doesn't have all of these errors. So one of the options was additional water at the wastewater treatment plant, which means that if we can improve the capacity of the plant, we may absorb some more of these overflow events and not generate issues. Another option was the disconnection of the footing drains. Now, footing drains, any house before 1973 had footing drains built, and they were the sanitary system. After the Clean Water Act, no things were supposed to be allowed to be connected again, except some people that did it. But in essence, all the houses past 1973 had footing drains to a sump pump and pumped outside. So this connection of footing drains for old houses was going to be very difficult to undertake because you have to dig around the house, take the footing drains, put them in the sump pump and pump them outside. These costs are kind of on the order of $12,000 to $15,000 per house. Not to mention the cost of putting storm systems, because most of the houses on Grosse Ile in the subdivision setting, so you have to put storm systems around them to take some pumps into and discharge out to the canals or to the river. The third option was additional storage volume at the wastewater treatment. Okay, we could have taken all of that inflow, infiltration, excess flow, put it in another retention. However, we don't have the room at the plant to build another basin. So, in essence, we found out that the only option that was viable is alternative one, which is additional wet weather capacity at the treatment plant. And that meant is the average daily flow will remain the same, 2.25 million gallons per day. The proposed, again, is 2.25 million gallons per day. The 7-day rollage for concentrations is at 5.2 mgd. For the peak design flow moved from 6.1 mgd to 7.1 mgd, which means that we will be processing 1 more million gallons a day at the treatment plant that's going to handle all of these SSOs that we're having. So, as part of that analysis, we had to look at the township finances, of course, the project cost burden. We had what we call, we performed a affordability analysis to see how much of a burden all of these expenses cause the township. And the burden was pretty much moderate size. It's a sizable expense. But again, it had to be done, to be undertaken so we can alleviate all of these violations, possible penalties by Eagle. And of course, with that, the timeline becomes an issue. We are still paying on the old station program. So the township finance had to look into when can we start affording to pay for any improvement. So we had to negotiate with Eagle, of course, the timeline, but we'll get to the timeline a little bit later. That's the sheet I passed out to you. Alternative number one, we had to prepare a basis of design, submit it to Eagle for approval, discuss and negotiate with Eagle that scope, submit for permits. Then we had to get approval from Eagle to fund the project. So we came up with a project, how is a capacity, but we had to get approved by Eagle before we generated it as a project. Once they approved it, it became a mandate by the ACO, the amended ACO. The project must be undertaken. Now, with this sheet here, I added that separate form to you so you can see it better. We went back and forth on negotiating timelines. When can we afford these? We were able to their original mandated date by almost. So the date you need to look at and pay attention to here is October 31st, 2025. That's a drop that does not go beyond it. The project has to be done by then. Because of COVID, we were delayed in the design process. Of course, we couldn't have anything done. We couldn't have any topographic surveys done. So we requested an amended schedule from them. And they provided the relief at the time. Then we decided, okay, this is a schedule we're going to go with. All of a sudden, parts, labor became an issue. So concerned that if we let you go with the original schedule that we approved, you're not going to be able to build it in time. So we need you to move up the construction date. And that's where you see the green entries in here. So we had to build the project by October 12th, and we have to start construction by February 20th. Pretty much, again, another mandate by Eagle, so we can finish construction of the project October 31st, 2025. And we're almost online. Why we're here tonight, so hopefully you can award the project so we can get started by February 20th, even if we have to bring a shovel and start digging. So go ahead, Joe.
So Heil, sorry to slow you down, just one question. So I understand these dates, if it's not completed by October 31st, 2025, then what happens?
You'll be subjected to penalties by Eagle.
Penalties meaning
fines, and they could be in the order of $10,000 a day.
A day?
A day. But again, they could be that, and if you show the fines, it could be more escalate, but hopefully we're not going to exceed that. And with the project, with the contractor that we have, we are very confident that this project is going to go way before then.
Is there anything with the contractor, the individual or the group that's doing it? Are they responsible for getting it done October 31st, or is Grosse Ile Township responsible?
Liquidated damages against them, so if they fail to achieve it by then, they'll be subject to liquidators. So, but again, based on the scope and the discussion with them, this contractor is very well qualified. I've been told of their references. They're very confident that he can achieve this. And we even talked to them and they said, we will be done way before the 2025.
So they have a reason to get it done also. I guess. That's all I need.
Just as clarification, Joe, that we are responsible for it. We have a backup plan. If we're responsible, we can get the money from them. We're going to be responsible. So
Understood.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, Eagle is not going after the contractor. They're going to come after the township. But again, we have some recourse with them to make sure that done.
Thank you.
Good, very good question. Okay. More questions on the schedule, or you? Go ahead.
It may be redundant, but does Eagle consider mitigating circumstances if something, say we have a supply shortage and can't get parts, is there acceptance of that, or is that something we're just going to have to bend?
Their staff were adamant that don't even come with any excuses. You get time. We delayed you 3 years, and we set this date. You better meet the date. So we had these discussions again, just in case, because again, you never know what's going to happen. Another situation, but you know, it all becomes an argument that will leave the arguments to the attorneys to make plans who will stay out of it. Because again, by the way, I don't know, Mr. Supervisor, you had a good attorney on board that helped us negotiate with them the extension of the time.
Yeah,
If it wasn't for him, I mean, we would have still been fighting with them, but he was.
We had a good committee, and I was be part of it and learned a lot. But it was a good ACL because we got the extension, and now we have form. I mean, we'd always, obviously, if something came up, we would make the argument. But they become pretty adamant about things, and we have no leverage to stop them.
I don't want to delay this discussion, but again, we had very contentious meetings with them, very argumentative staff board. We presented lots of other options than these three that we presented, and they fought us all the way on all of them. So it was years of going back and forth, visiting them, arguing with them. We finally get to this point, and I'm glad we get to this point because it's proved to be the most cost-effective, most feasible approach to undertake these. So the project scope that we came up with, the construction of a new 60-foot diameter final clarifier, the replacement of pump number 4 with a capacity of 1,700 gallons per minute, the existing intermediate lift screw pump with a new 48-inch screw pump, the pumping capacity 7.1 million gallons a day, firm capacity and associated. And on that one, I'd like to emphasize a little bit more. The original plan was to place the intermediate pumps with a submersible pump station. And that would have cost probably another $3 million on top of this cost. We found out that just in these improvements by replacing the screw pumps and increasing the capacity, we were able to achieve the same capacity at much lower cost. So again, as we were going ahead with the project, we always were aiming to make sure that we save the town. We don't want to just spend it. New secondary sludge pump with a capacity of 150 gallons per minute at 30 feet total dynamic head and associated work. Installation of 2 flow-based hypochlorite feed pumps with a capacity of 120 gallons per day at PSI discharge pressure and associated work. And the reason we're increasing the capacity of hypochlorite pumps because, again, when you process more sewage, you need more chlorine to treat. Installation of 1 ferric chloride feed pump with a capacity of 120 gallons per day at 100 pound PSI discharge pressure. Or electrical and concrete work, restoration and cleanup. And the next slide, right? All right. This is a project, in essence. This is a layout of it. See, in yellow is the 60-foot diameter clear, and right here where the hand is, that's where the lift pump. And with the clear fire, we have piping, associated piping that's connected to the existing clear fires and back to the chambers and discharge. So this is a general layout of it. It's a little bit more complete design drawings, but at least for RAM to give you an idea what we're doing, this will give you an idea where the location of the 60-foot clarifier is. Okay. Now that the project submitted for approval, we went out for bids. When we went out for bids, we had what we call a mandatory pre-bid meeting. We wanted to make sure that whoever bids this project is aware of every part of it, every intricacy of it. We didn't want them back and say, well, I wasn't aware, or we didn't know about this. So we had 3 general contractors and about 7 suppliers that attended the meeting. So we were hoping that we'll get 3 bids. When we received bids, we only received 1 bid at $7,341. And the reason is the second bidder was on his way and he got into accident, never made it. We couldn't wait for him to arrive. It's the person that submitted the bid, and it'll open us to litigation. Didn't open the bid and just waited for the other guy. He could have been outside just figuring out what his number. Again, I'm not saying that's what they do, but again, we had a bid and it opened at $7,341,000. The bid price is 12.9% higher than the estimate that was prepared a year ago, at $6.5 million. And now again, in 1 year, price of material, price of labor all went up. At the same time, as we bid the project, we adding more to the scope of work. We added the replacement of plug valves inside at a high cost. So, although it's higher than the estimate, comfortable that based on the market value at that point when we opened the bids, it's price. And we believe it was competitive because we had a second bidder that prepared the bid. It wasn't that he only knew he's the only bidder and called his price on it. So, again, the bid reflects current market conditions due to labor shortage and cost, and the price volatility and availability of equipment. Where do we go from here? Time is of the essence. The original construction start date is November 1st, 2023. The EGO requested construction date was moved up to February 20th, 2023. And again, that's because of their concern that if we start later on in November 1st, we may not meet the deadline. It's going to give us any leeway. So we ended up moving that date up to February, and we're hoping we can meet that. Again, the subject to awarding that night, we can get the project moving by February. Construction completion date is non-negotiable. Again, it's October 31st, 2025. So, contract award. The township did to the negotiated timeline approved by EGO. No flexibility on the starting dates, and our recommendation is to provide 15% contingency based on the age of the plant and what we may encounter. Now, is that going to be used? It may not be used. They may come in right at 7,341. They may come in at less. If we encounter something inside the plant when they go and start dismantling pipes and valves, it could go wrong. The plant is old and it's shown its age, and it needs to be considered when we award something. I mean, we're not applying the 15% to give them the 15% on top of their bid. It's just a contingent just in case something goes wrong. And that's all I have. So, sorry I had to rush through it, but like I said, every bullet I talk forever on. So,
we thought it'd be a good idea for Heil to do some of us, some of the people on the board even here or possibly were knowledgeable about how this whole thing got together, and pretty much it's a state mandate. one of the things that I know I found interesting, here we are, little Grosse Ile, trying to comply, and they seem to be holding our feet to the fire, and then you have communities that literally aren't doing anything, but it's good. I mean, this will be overall, it's good for the community, and that's the main thing. It's not that it's for the state; it's for us. So,
You don't want overflows.
well, and the overflows were very expensive. The penalties we were paying for an overflow, and we didn't have a ton, but you can have two. It can be $200,000 or $300,000. So, and they have standards, and I know one of the things we talked about with them, because if you look line back when we sign this versus when it has to. Part of the reason we even had to do this is because they changed their standards, and now they want us to meet that. And one of my fears was, what happens we get to 2025 or 2027 and change them again. But we took care of that. So.
Yes, Ohio, I have two questions. If we are going to be, the net effect of this is to reduce the outflow.
Yes.
What is the increased capacity of solid waste that we're presently hauling from there? Does that mean we're going to be making more trips on a monthly basis, or we need a facility to somehow store those things? Is there any impact on
sludge,
that?
you're talking about the sludge?
That is correct.
Usually with the additional flow as a diluted sewage, because again, most of the overflows and excess flows are basically water. And we lost that argument before. It's we're bypassing water, and but the suspended solids and the hard material probably remain the same.
Okay.
Because again, it's what we're bypassing is 90%, if not more, of just water. So.
Same question back to the wear and tear on the facility. If instead of having the flows out, processing much more inflow, if you will, into the plant was originally designed for X, the goalposts of several times, and now we're processing an awful lot more of material coming in. What is the net impact on the plant going to be? Is that going to reduce the facility? Is that going to add wear and tear on the machinery? Do we need to look at a more stringent maintenance program?
Well, I'm glad you asked that. To answer your first question, yes, of course, with additional flow, you're going to have more wear and tear. But we are working on the asset management plan for the
Right.
plant. Not only the planetary system and for the manhole rehab and for the pump stations. And years ago, this wasn't a requirement or by Eagle. Now it is. And the reason is they're finding out that lots of communities are kind of down the road. Okay, the plant is processing, we're treating it, putting it in the river, but they're not paying attention to the wear and tear, to how much aging the plant is going through in the process. All of a sudden they come back and say, oh my God, the plant part, what do you do now? With the asset management plan, you're going to have a program, 5-year capital improvement program, 20-year capital improvement program, by which it's like a menu that this year need to do that. This year need to do that, this year need to do that to maintain this facility operational. Similar to the asset measurement that you do, similar to the asset measurement that you do for water mains. We have one for water mains at the same time. Again, if you ignore the system, it's going to age without you paying attention. Suddenly you're going to get caught way behind the funding to repair and to maintain. Instead of doing preventative maintenance, now you're doing replacement. When you do replacement, it's at a much cost. Then you have to raise rates. You raise rates, you're going to get pushback. And it's better to have a plan in place and follow the plan to be able to maintain the facility, just keep it going. So.
When you look at the asset management plan, is this going to change that, or is that already considered baked into the formula?
What's
with the asset management plan that we have?
Yes. The one it's going to be pretty much very prescriptive on what needs to be regularly. Like every 5 years, we need to televise and clean our sanitary system. Find out if there are filtration inflow sources. As we do the we can see the joints leaking, then we can treat them as such. Pump stations, we got to pump stations and make sure that if we feel that some seals are breaking or some pumps are not working to their higher efficiency like as intended, we have to do something about them. We have to replace them and so forth. So the asset management plan is going to be very helpful, keeping the township on track with the preventative maintenance so you don't have to fall behind doing replacement. And the replacement comes at a much higher cost than just preventative. So
Thank you for the
applies to
clarification.
water mains and roading us.
Ask where we are on that asset management plan, around when?
We just are in the conclusion phase of the year of analyzing the pipes. And once that's done, we have a sub-consultant working for us develop the BRE or business risk evaluation to figure out what is needed, what is priority, what do we have to do to keep the system going. I'm hoping that by May we'll have some draft of that. Submit, by the way, an operation and maintenance program every year to Eagle to some of the repairs and maintenances. We also, at the same time, submit a draft asset management status report to them to tell them where we're at with the program.
One more question on this, just the financing of it. If pushing date, does that affect, is the money available now, or how does that work exactly?
Go ahead, David.
That was the .95 mils that the electorate approved in August. That's for the amount that we're taking out for this project, that'll be sufficient to cover.
Costs that might, and as a matter of fact, the village that's coming in isn't going to be assessed until 2025 to pay for those. But we've kind of got it all timed out based upon our overall millage levy and construction time of that. So
Gotcha.
it's
That was
well in hand.
That was my question. Thank you.
I have a quick question. So I see that our peak design flow in the original 1976 design is 0.1 million gallons per day. Our increase with the plant design flow will be 7.1 million gallons per day. What I don't see, and maybe I missed it, what is our peak throughput during a significant wet weather event? I'm trying to see this 7.1 million gallons per day going to cover historic wet weather events. Is it good for a 50-year storm, a 100-year storm?
Well, this is a very difficult question to quantify, and again, but the 7.1 million gallons was based on hydraulic models that were generated by the engineer for the different scenarios. We picked up the 24-year rainfall event, and the upper, I think it's 3.5 inches per hour in 24 hours, I'm sorry. And they applied it to the system, and they saw how the system behaves, and they're very confident, and Eagle accepted that the 7.1 mg hydraulic capacity of the plant will handle that event.
So as long as, I'll rephrase, as long as weather complies with the 24-year model, not have any surplus discharge.
Technically not, unless there's an ad, and we can qualify that, and we can always argue the act of God, and they're very receptive to it. We've argued it before that we got hit with a perfect storm with antecedent moisture in the ground, where the ground was very well saturated. Snowfall event and the rainfall that comes after it. Now, the rainfall could be less 24-hour rainfall event, but combined with the rest of them, it exceeded the capacity of the plant by one-fold or two-folds. That's when we say that's an act of God, and we can argue it.
So as it stands, so this is designed to meet the needs of the 14,000 or so Grosse Ile. Is there any additional design considerations in this for growth?
You know, we got about 50 years out of our previous treatment plant. I don't know what the population of Grosse Ile was in 1970s, but I assume it probably wasn't 14,000. If we were to grow to 18,000 next 25 years, are we looking at like we're going to need another clarifier, another $10 million or 10 million gallons of pump capacity? Is there any additional capacity built into this plan?
Not into this one, no. And that, I mean, a good question you're asking, because a few years ago, the township put moratorium on developing in the township because, again, they were very concerned that the more houses we overflow we're going to have at that plant, we don't have that capacity. We already are subjected to penalties. All of that comes into play when you apply for a sanitary permit to Eagle. They're going to tell you don't have room for them. You either remove infiltration inflow to fivefold what you're putting in to allow for it to come in, or we're not going to approve it.
The other thing worth mentioning is I don't think that there's necessarily an issue at the plant with capacity on a regular day or a regular event. Where we're having these capacity issues, rain events, where the plant gets inundated during those time periods. It's really not as much of a, and so how maybe you can speak to this, but it's really not so much a capacity issue with other residential use on any given day. It's the rain event, and these rain events like contribute to the plant on the older homes, ones that still have footing drains and whatnot. Newer homes don't contribute as much because that's all being discharged over land or to a storm sewer system under the new, plumbing code. So there is probably a house cap, but we're not at it now. I can't speak to whether far away we are from it, but what I can speak to is just, the issues that were addressed. They're not associated with necessarily a daily capacity issue. It's a rain capacity issue. I have one more then. Is there any, and maybe, no, or I don't know, Derek, is there any communities that use any kind of education program, try to offset some of that, like, hey, significant rain events taking place, please consider water conservation, or is that just bonkers?
It did happen. It's lots of communities, whenever they anticipate that they're going to overwhelm the system, they issue call water conservation alert. Please, washing machines, try not to shower actually, because again, not to make a joke of it, the worst day in New York is during time at the Super Bowl Sunday. Everybody goes to the bathroom and the flush, and the system is overwhelmed. I mean, there is a validity to that you're asking. But yes, to answer your question, lots of communities issue these alerts. Please minimize your water consumption during these times because we're trying not to overwhelm the system.
And I think we've done that in the past. I remember this is like that here. And Jameson, to kind of reiterate what Derek was saying, a lot of this started when I realized how leaky our water system was, the sewer system. That's why Heil is saying the big we have is the water leaking into the pipes from the rain event. Not so much that we have too much sewage or too many people going to the bathrooms. Rain events. A lot of our older pipes, not many of them have been replaced, started televising the lines, the sewer lines, etc. That we just had all this infiltration into the system, and we were kicking out water basically, but it was still, gray water.
We did line lots of sewers, and the whole argument for years was, where's this water coming from? Is it from manholes and sewers? We replaced them, we fixed them, we aligned them. One of my arguments with Eagle is, I don't care how much if we have so many houses that are older than 1973 that are conduit sanitary system with the footing drains. And the flow monitoring that we've done at that point. And I was very happy to find that out. At the same time, I was very concerned to find that out. Again, we needed to know what's causing this flow to come into the system, or excess flows ending up at the plant. And that's where storage becomes valuable. But again, we have a limited size facility at the plant to put more storage. Build another basin and put another 6 million gallon basin in there and forget fires, forget anything else. But we don't have the room for it. That's why this option by 1 million gallons, hoping that the timing of the treatment will process more flow as it comes in. We may end up with 2 million gallons coming in. The fact that we have a million additional capacity with the type of treatment and that they're processing it will process that through.
Okay.
Thank you.
Maybe, Derek, this kind of is off a little bit from your topic, basis from this. If we still have homes, though, which is very important, still the sump pump and the drain tile into the sanitary as opposed to the storm, do we still have a large percentage that are still tied in? And
Brian, please.
I mean, is that
The sump pumps are not connected, technically, are not supposed to be to the sanitary, so, but
is there a way? I know when you do that smoke treatment, you infusion from the ground, all the water is coming. I think Uta was talking about that. We didn't realize how much is coming into our system, which made this problem worse. But do we still numerous homes though?
Yeah.
And how can we address it, or can't you?
That was one thing we looked at. In fact, that was the first thing Eagle was
disconnect the footing drains.
The problem there is we have so homes and the cost, and the idea was, well, we'll do that when that house is sold. And we said, well, that's not going to take care of anything. I mean, these houses, you'd have to have a selling for it to make any impact. If you're going to wait, you could be waiting 20, 30, 40, 50 years for a house to sell that has to be taken care of. So, and then the cost, if we were just to go in, it cost itself, plus the disruption for, an individual. Now with the new homes, any new building isn't causing that problem. So this should take care of the problem. Because again, you're talking not your daily. You're really talking about when you have the rain event, no melt.
Just to expand on your question, Joe, some communities undertook a program, but they have a different setting. They have subdivisions with houses next to, so they undertook a program to disconnect footing drains to the tune of $12,000 a household.
And they paid for it?
There was participation from the community, some from the residents, but mostly the city ended up paying for most of it, and it didn't achieve as much of the.
I just thought if we went to one of the root problems, which you just spoke about, it would help this in the future also, and it would help us all. I mean, it would help us continue.
I mean, we
I know that's off task for
That process is it's very intrusive on the property. I mean, basically you have to dig around the foundation and disconnect that pipe, direct it into a sump pump system. So it's not only cost prohibitive, but very intrusive on a property and damaging. So in essence, we're the symptom rather than the cause, but as far as these things, it is better to do that in this case.
The major problem with Grosse Ile, some of the houses are isolated. They're not all in a subdivision setting side by side. So we have storm systems serving all of these houses. So for you to charge a sump pump into a neighbor's yard or into the yard, end up with the fungus, you're going to end up with mosquitoes. You need to go to a storm system, and you don't have that. That's another cost added to that solution that we looked into. And this is why we figured out that it's not feasible, it's not viable. The best option is to increase the plant.
A little bit of an offshoot, but I think it'll make sense to some. We get a lot of phone calls when we have a pretty significant rain event, basement drains backing up, and we always get called. Is there something wrong with the sewer that it's not working, or it's clogged in the main and it's backing up into my basement? Well, that's the case. Usually, what it is your footing drains are tied into your sanitary, and you might have some compromise on your sanitary line that goes out to the main, like tree roots. What happens is all that rainwater that's from your footing drains inundates your line going to and that's what's backing up in your basement. So for anybody that you've talked to that has had backup during a rain event, generally their drain tile is tied to the sewer and it just doesn't have the capacity or is compromised so it doesn't get out. So, and that very frequently and is a good indication of kind of the issue there. Water can't get out fast enough out of your home and it backs your basement up. So
Before, years ago, basements used to back up on Grosse Ile, and that's because they didn't have the capacity. Once we put in the north-south interceptor, that problem went away. The only problem that we have, exactly what Derek explained now, that it'll be individually caused by root intrusion into a lead that's causing the surcharge, house discharge, and from footing drains not to be able to make it to the sanitary line into the basement, just like Derek explained. Okay. It's a complicated formula, but again, now we're going to try this solution and hopefully it's going to work, and that'll be it. If you have less than 2 overflows every 10 years, we'll retire the ACO. We'll tell them, okay, we're done with the ACO. Hopefully that's our
They'll
goal.
come up with something else.
That's
but-
our goal. So,
Thank you, Heil. Any other concern comments by the board?
if you think of other questions, please route them through Derek, and we'll do them later on through email.
Well, I have to say, I like that you also address the asset management plan. I think it's those two things working together that's going to keep us out of trouble, is that one, we're maintaining the system, we're always looking, troubleshooting for issues at the same time that we're doing this major repair. And so we're not going to get caught flat-footed, with some big problem on the road.
DPS has always had their capital improvement process. This asset management program that the state mandate, another state mandate, actually is just much more detailed, and it will benefit to us.
real quick comment. First one, just want to make sure that the idea is hammered home. This is the culmination of probably 5, 6, 7 years worth of work. So between CO negotiations and the project design and the millage and the bonding and the bidding, this has been a project that spans multiple boards, different leaders, and is really kind of the end to a long period of work. So this isn't something that just came out of nowhere, a long process to get to this point. So appreciate your support with the compliance here and getting this work done. So I want that point very clear. And I wanted to thank Raines for being here to kind of give you and the audience an explanation of what we're voting on tonight and the work that we're going to be doing over there, and appreciation that the township has for the millage being passed to allow us to comply and work done. And then one quick last item. There is additional work that exists beyond just this base packet. And at the prices that came in on the bid, there is the capacity within the $10 million bond issuance to be able to complete the work. So we have right around $2 million of additional work that still needs to be designed and bid. That is kind of part of the EC, but there's some additional like HVAC work that needs to be done there that'll be part of that bond. So you'll see something in the future here with regards to that work, but price that was received on this bid will not inhibit our ability to comply and get work completed, so we can all fit it in with the dollar allowance that we have. Those are just a couple of points I wanted to finish up with.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Heil.
Thank you, sir.
All right, we have a motion. Based upon the recommendation of the Grosse Ile Department of Services Commission and the Grosse Ile Township Engineers, the Township Board hereby awards a contract with Sorensen Gross LLC at a cost of $7,341,000 for various capital improvements at the Grosse Ile wastewater plant. Included within The approval is the authorization 15% contingency, making the authorized project total $442,150. Offer?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. And I'm sure Derek thanks you. All right, David.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion based upon a recommendation by the Grosse Ile Department of Public Services Commission and the Grosse Ile Township Engineer. The Township Board approves a contract at a cost of $332,250 with the low bidder White Auction for the installation of 2 primary and 2 secondary sumps at the Grosse Ile wastewater treatment plant. The scope also includes all associated work as listed on the bids dated December 15th, 2022.
Support.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Well, he's
He's going to talk. Gotcha.
The treatment plant, got 4 sumps, 2 primary and 2 secondary that move the sludge holding tanks. And all 4 pumps are in need of replacement. The pumps have been already purchased. We purchased those August, I believe. Derek, is that?
They were delivered in December. I want to say we ordered them about,
authorized them
yeah,
earlier. And this bid is for the installation only on those pumps. And the additional work that's required, and some piping and electrical work necessary for the install as a budgeted expense.
anything else, David?
No.
All right.
I guess I was just curious if these already are the pumps you were talking about. Those are
No,
a whole
no.
separate set of
Yes,
pumps. Okay,
yes.
thank you.
Pumps. Same
These are not the pumps.
same sludge.
Right.
sludge out of the clarifiers, primary and secondaries. Yep.
Other questions or comments? Seeing none, we have a motion based upon a recommendation by the Grosse Ile Department of Services Commission and the Grosse Ile Township Engineer. The Township Board approves a contract at a cost of $302,250 with low bidder Weiss Consult for the installation of 2 primary and 2 secondary sludge at the Grosse Ile wastewater treatment plant. The work scope includes all associated work as listed on the bid submittal dated 15th, 2022. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, we can install our pumps. Thank you. And that here of our action items for tonight. So our second public comment, again, 3 minutes. Please state your name, where you live. Do we have it? Okay, Brian?
They will change the standards. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, you can.
Yeah, you can bet it.
Okay, Brian Loftus, Broadhead Road, Grosse Ile. Don't like being here for this, but during the December board, my appointment to the Commerce Park Commission was up for consideration by the board. Clearly, a defamatory comment was made about myself, and I'm here to contest, get the facts out. The statement that I had acted irresponsibly, $188,000 of unnecessary costs. It's just inaccurate. I want to defend the decision that I made at that time, the decision of the board, to resume. Mr. Flavin, here present tonight, statement is inaccurate and that the litigation was my fault and unnecessary. Litigation was in fact the last after a lot of negotiation and concessions. And it was a board decision, not my decision. We'd been in extended the grievance 17-37. Okay, extended arbitration attempting to resolve it, and we'd almost reached a settlement. And well, we had reached what we thought was a settlement with some generous concessions. The Police Officers Association came up with a demand for lifetime health care. Time guaranteed health care would have, according to the actuarials, set the township back over $6.227 million. We knew that this was part of the moving parts because I sent them a letter, which I will now read. It was sent on October 19th, 2020, both via first class and email. Mr. Flavin, during public comment at the 12 October business meeting of the Grosse Board of Trustees, you made several statements that were factually inaccurate. The attached report is the text of a report I gave to the public at the board's 13 July meeting. Clarify. The Circuit Court judge ruled in favor of the township based on the township ordinance that precludes commission or committee from making any decision that would bind the township, i.e. the taxpayers. Thus, the police commission had no obligation to hear the grievance, let alone approve it. By approving 17-37, the police commission altered the intent of the contract, leading to financial consequences for taxpayers. The GI Police Officers Association, not the township, appealed the decision. The Court of Appeals based its decision on the new interpretation of the altered contract. The contract that the Court of Appeals stated was approved by the Board of Trustees was, in fact, never approved by the Board. It had been altered by the Police Commission. Since the Circuit Court judge never ran, the Court of Appeals had no idea what to base a ruling on, and a signatory for the township allowed to provide testimony as to the meaning of the contract that I had signed on behalf of the township. Legal responsibility. Simply put, had the Police Commission adhered to the directives from the Township from the Board of Trustees as communicated by the liaison, Trustee Carl Bletcher, none of the litigation would have occurred. It was really that simple, and any statements to the contrary else. Included in that letter, I had the text of the July supervisor explain the moving parts, the arbitration, the concessions. Excerpt from the township on the over $200,000 we were currently paying in the
Brian, you have 30 seconds.
21 fiscal year, and excerpts from the actuarial verification, the GRS report that showed the $450,000 increase and the $6.2. Again, 3 of the board members are present. We all know what happened. Again, this is, and I'll be glad to provide any of the documentation that aren't familiar with it. For your time.
Mr. Heil.
I live on East River.
You haven't moved.
My name's still Bill Heil. 3 quick comments. I have lived in homes that have needed to have the footings attended to. I got excited and recommended Everdry, and I still do. They're very, very good. You're not here to hear that. But what I'm getting at is that the moment we're talking about here with the sewage treatment plant are peak moments, but the net peak moment for damage is severe. The investment we make will happen to know when, but it's an accumulation of unrelated events that correlate. Heil was talking about it well, and then you pay, and you pay. We should encourage residents to have their systems up. That $12,000 or $15,000 compared to what they would pay if things went wrong. We just spread that cost over time. It's a buy, okay? I am concerned about the meetings that we have and that we mentioned that briefly before. I think it's a public good for people informed, and when we make as many opportunities available as possible to achieve that, then we have served the public well with that. Yes, we can turn around statistics and sometimes compare the cost of what is going on and wonder about it. Who was an Oakland County Commissioner. And they all agreed that there should be money put into the buses to put lifts on them, transportation bus for people who had handicaps. When they looked at the actual use that went on, it was $30 a lift. And so they readjusted for it. But I mean, I want to acknowledge that it might be costly, it may not, but I think it's a good idea to understand. And finally, police officers. I remember months ago, or a year or more ago, we had a meeting, and you acknowledged we'd have our third police shift, but maybe not for an entirety. And I thought that had some integrity to it. I wish I'd chosen a different word. I'm still in favor of enough staffing. The reasoning behind the staff levels that are there has not somebody's left ear or right ear or from a parrot that Groucho Marx had. We need that for public safety. The reason we have
3 seconds, Bill.
Okay. We got to pay for some police officers in 3 seconds.
Well taken. Thank you, Bill. Mr. Z.
Blauvelt, before I get started, just a brief comment on what Mr. Loftus said. This commission did have the right to hear that grievance, and it was stated in the bylaws that were signed to the union and the township supervisor at that time, who was Brian Law. Now, I'd like to make some comments regarding the November 14th meeting. Question came up about police officers and why we didn't go out for additions. Jim, you and Uta, and endorsed by Mr. Bletcher, said we couldn't do it because it was a renewal. Well, that's not totally true. We could have additional monies and allowed the police department to go after additional millage, just as the school board did. And then, lo and behold, after making a presentation on how important it was for Mr. Bletcher and the board to have the comment, he hit the granddaddy of them all and hit the home run and said, we don't give police officers. I'm sorry, I disagree. It was put in place by Mr. Porcarelli, identifies the people we needed, and he promoted the efficiency of that department with that roster. It states in there that you cannot service a 10 square mile radius with less than 3 cars and give an adequate call time. Now, if he wants to tell the public he wants to drop down to 2 cars, that's entirely up to him. And in order to provide those 3 people on the road, you need to maintain our first offenders list of 12 police officers. The formula shows, if you want to mathematics, go ahead. It shows that's how many people you need to keep 9 people on the road continuously and 3 cars for service. Jim, now's not the time for a special dedicated millage. We're using 100% of the money out of the fund right now for the police department. The timing is wrong. The risk is high. The fastest way out of this is to take that money and get that police officer on the road right now. Then allow our police department to prepare a millage for 2023 and get us out of this. That first responder on the road. First responder, police officer, fireman, medical assistant. In there.
30 seconds.
While that volunteer is getting the call in his kitchen at the wagon and show up, that first responder needs to be there. Okay? We need that police officer on the road. We don't want it next year. We don't want it need it now. Let's make it happen. Let's show some leadership up there and give the service that they think they're getting on this island. Now, if any comments or questions on what I said, please feel free to mention them now, before I leave, so you don't have to talk behind my back. I'll be happy.
Not a question and answer session, it's a comment. Thank you, Bob.
You have the opportunity to time you want.
Thank you, Bob.
I'm restricted, I can't.
Thank you, Bob. And yes, Kathy. You change your seat. I can't see you back there. Or we're going to get podium. Yes.
051 Thorpe Court.
Yes,
I'm
Kath.
concerned because talked about this before. Nothing is more important to most people on the island than safety. You know, we have an older population, and I think that because we are short a policeman, somebody might not make it to the hospital in time. I mean, it's a concern. I mean, the reason a lot are here, like myself, it's the safety. That's what kept me here, and that's what Tim told me. Stay here. You know, you're safe. You've got a lot of police. They're on the spot. They're fabulous. They've been fabulous, and the fire too. So I just want to please find the money. You got COVID money, and number one important priority for every island. It's not the schools. It's the safety and the emergency. Just thank you.
Thank you, Kathy.
Kevin Flavin, Parke Lane. The interesting thing is tonight's meeting and November's kind of come together where it's helpful that we have the recording. And Bletcher, did you say at the November board meeting we do not have a shortage of police officers? And did you say adding a police officer to the police that we were adding a police officer to the police department? Did you? And didn't the 5-year plan include more officers for the past 8 years? And didn't we have a discussion, last board meeting about Mr. Budney and Mr. Naidu about how you funded the police? Yeah, we did have a conversation. It's in, and when it was said that they removed you guys, Naidu and Mr. Budney, you took $80,000 out of the budget in 2021. And then, this is a question, did you take $20,000 more out of it in 2022? So, in essence, you defunded the police department by $100,000, which would have for a new, would have paid for the police officer they have now. And did you say, Mr. Budney, you were not, or that you were unaware that there would be a budget shortfall when the police officer was supposed to be hired this past year? And if read the 5-year plan, we would have had a slight deficit at the end of the plan, and if there was a retirement from the police department, that there would be a huge chunk of money that would go out that doesn't have been planned for. Is that the case, that money was not planned for, why we don't have a 24th police officer? And the situation in Cincinnati with the football player from Buffalo is a perfect example of somebody who is alive today because he had immediate superior health care. He had waited for 5-6 minutes, the gentleman would either be dead or dead. So, are those questions that you were able to answer? You were not able to answer questions. So you said this is a representative government that you were voted in to represent the community. I don't think the community ever expected to go 4 years without you answering a question that you didn't answer. And I think you have a responsibility to tell the community, answer their questions. So, and since I used up my time yet.
Right there.
please explain to everybody why you will not have the meetings televised?
Thought we went over that.
No, we didn't go. I want the community to know on a recorded.
We said we're going to talk about it at the discussion.
Okay. My mistake. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Flavin. Anyone else? All right, with that, we'll move on to the discussion item. The discussion item was going to turn it over to Joe in a sec here because he's the one that asked. It's recording and broadcasting a township board of these special meetings and study sessions. We added commission meetings for that. And before I turn to Joe, I just wanted to say that as far as DDA, as far as meeting, even this meeting being livecast, what I look at is what's the purpose of it? What is it fulfilling? We look at one of our commission meetings. If we get one, maybe two people lucky, we look at our board meeting and we basically the same four people every so what hasn't been shown and what the only reservation I have is what are we actually doing? We're doing something just to do it. We're not really fulfilling anything. Having said that, quite frankly, is Mr. Flavin, did he leave? Oh, he did make a presentation at our meeting, and for once it was very professional and nice. And it made me go into it, and I think we're going to have some alternatives that should be acceptable to the board. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Joe.
Thank you, Supervisor. What brought this about was when I got on the board, we had different meetings, different times. And as you go on, obviously you don't have all the answers, and sometimes we had meetings in the morning, some in the afternoon, and I do want to say, Derek, at least, I mean, we got emails from you stating, you know, we're special meeting or this or that, what can you make? So it wasn't just put on there by Jim. They would ask, and I do appreciate that, obviously. One of the things to understand is that the study sessions that we had, and there really was some information out there in study sessions. I mean, there's some very good topics. I'm not sure if there's 1 or 100 or 1,000 or all 10 people that would like to hear what goes on at certain meetings, but if there's anybody that has an interest, I just felt that they should know about it. I wanted to see, obviously this is my opinion, but see what the rest of the board felt. That if the meetings that we had were all live. I mean, if we session, it was at 6:30 or, you know, whatever time we have. Very important issues talked about. And I could never understand why they didn't go now. And I get, you know, there's rules, and one of the rules is it doesn't have to be live. Only the scheduled board meetings do. Who does that? Is that correct?
So,
go ahead.
Oh, just, you know, it's scheduled board
they're
meetings.
Open. All these meetings are open meetings.
No, what I meant to have to be taped.
No.
They open.
No.
they do not have to be
They
taped.
don't have to be televised or
They-
taped.
Okay, that's fine.
Yes.
I thought that the regular scheduled ones were to be taped. So,
Joe, just to be clear, because we were all kind of talking together, I think technically, Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, but you not need to be televised or recorded, but we do it as to the community.
Okay.
and that all started when we started receiving cable revenues that helped fund the cable department, allowed us to have public programming. And then there's a difference I want to point out. Meetings such as ours, regular meetings of the Township Board, regular meetings of commissions, and technically have to have action items. They're business meetings of the that is meeting. So a study session is a business meeting. There's no minutes taken. There's no requirement for minutes. And traditionally, we haven't televised those. Partly because we also meet in a smaller room around a round table. But bottom line is that the televising is something that the board decided many decades ago was a good sort of community.
Okay.
So I think that there's,
I don't mean to interrupt. I want to hear, did you have something that you were?
No, only I was going to say is when Uta started, she said by law, we don't have to record to show them, but the board did in their policies and procedures years ago that certain meetings are to always be the regular meetings be and
Yes, that's where I was going. I know that it has to by rule.
A difference between town versus
I get that.
state.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not a state law. I get that, but let's move on. So my point is, what I'd like to see is that all of our that we do have to be televised. I'd like them and recorded at the minimum. If we have a study session to record it, I know there's been men and maybe ladies that have, recorded our study sessions, but that we should be doing that. And I think I personally just can't come up with a viable reason why we shouldn't be showing the township everything we do, every meeting we have. Now, forget about the meetings where you can go into closed session. That's all stuff. Now that is by law, or administrative law, actually. So let's that. But for me personally, that's why I brought this up, is I can't see any reason, and the $50, the $100 that it costs, I can't see the balance of saving the money and not showing the people what we're doing, because we're voted in by, just don't get here. We're voted in, and once we get voted in by them, I just think we're in upon showing them exactly what we do, what we say, and as some of you know, I don't care if the TV's on or not. I'll tell you how I feel, and it doesn't bother me either way. I'm going to be the same person with or without the TV on. So again, this is my opinion, and I wanted to bring this up, discussion for the board to see what all of your opinion is, and I know that Kyle had wanted to add to this, so I don't want to go any further. I know he has something to it.
We'll have, everybody, I will just throw in at this point, looking into it, we can tape, and I guess we can televise too ourselves by training each commission, each board, each commission, which switch to throw, and to make sure that they
I already
watch.
thought the commissions were on.
Some of them are. Not all of
He's
them.
referring to who's doing the film, saving money by having the commissioners.
The commission themselves were, and like we have a special meeting and we have just a study session. We don't call them in to do that. We could do that ourselves. So that ability is there. So I just throw that out to you. Oh, please. So the ability's there. It's what does the board want to do?
That was my question tonight.
What is the
Bring it up to all of you.
Just to be clear, the difference would be, instead of having Mike and Lori in the control room, also shifting cameras, and it could be set up that there's just one big, broad camera to have a meeting or a committee. I would say you would hear, I would say township board meeting, commission meeting, DPS meeting, police, fire, zoning. Those should all have, I think, a crew but then there would be other kinds of committee and commission meetings where maybe the department head flicks the switch.
And I do believe within, basically all our meetings are Monday through Thursday. Our openings where commissions that aren't TV could pick a day that they would have room available to them to do that, so that they could be taped or whatever.
Yeah,
This is the only room that.
Well, I understand that. Interested first just with with just our board meetings, and then with our study session, and then Kyle wanted to add on talking about the committees, and that's why I said I didn't want to go into that part.
And just and one thing that wasn't mentioned, talking about the DDA, the whole commission came up, said, I don't want to be on TV. And quite truthfully, I mean, I on a commission at the time that started, and way back, gosh, I don't know when we started showing, we got that cable, but when we did, no commission wanted to be on TV. The people being considerate, feel that it impacts them and behave in front of the camera. We obviously, DPS has no problem with it. I mean, the ones that are on it right now have no problem with it, and it's just something you got to work through. Is that, hey, yeah, you're being taped, or you're out there. It really shouldn't be a hindrance to what you say or how you perform your duties.
I think the balance, Jim, far exceeds showing people, for lack of a better term, how about TV land?
Yeah.
Showing them what all our commissions do, than the people being a little bit intimidated by the camera. I guess you get, I don't know, maybe if it's not for you, it's not for you. I get that. I understand, respect their opinion about how they feel, because that's important. But I just see something as in the Township of Grosse Ile and meetings and anything that people would like to see what they're doing, because it's their tax dollars is what runs everything in this town.
And as I said earlier, only thought is how what are we doing this for? We're not doing it for 10,000 people, because I guarantee 10,000 people aren't watching our meetings. We can tell somewhat by show up. I mean, and we're talking not at one meeting, we're talking about the whole year, how many people show up to our meetings. And I understand that, and I wouldn't expect, as a resident, I wouldn't expect to have to come to every meeting. You certainly, at some point in time, if things are important enough, you're going to show up at a meeting, and people don't show up. So how many bites? What are we doing it for? On the flip side of that, what I found out is, we can do this at a relatively inexpensive way. So whatever the board wants to do.
I have a couple.
No.
I can follow you if you like,
No.
Kyle.
No.
So,
Sure. No, I mean, well, what others have to say too. I mean, I wanted to add the commissions partly. I wasn't at the DDA meeting, but I followed discussion online about it, and I saw the minutes afterwards, and mostly just I've seen some of the chatter about what's been happening downtown, and I think televising things would have helped with some of the expectations there. I'm not saying it pleases everyone, but I do think it could help is one thing I wanted to say. I mean, I have general thoughts about how to televise and all this, but that was why I added the commission parts.
Yeah, and as I say, we have that ability, and if that's what the board wants to do, we can do it.
James,
Yes.
do you want him next, or?
Well, I was if we're just talking about board meetings right now.
Talking Phil.
Yeah, David.
Board meetings, I don't have that big a problem with study sessions, our study sessions, being held in this room. I mean, they're gonna, and being televised, especially assuming that they are held, you know, at 6 o'clock on our Monday meeting night, or something like that. Get into conflicts of time with other commissions if we try to do it at other evenings where we can't get this room or it's taken. Now, when it comes to the board special meetings, we've had them where we needed to have a meeting to approve a form that had to go to Wayne County. I don't know that that rises to a meeting, still an open meeting. I don't think it rises to being televised. And it rises to being in this room. We've also had specials where the sole purpose was to go into a closed session. So I'm not special meetings fall under what we're trying to accomplish. Well, regular board meetings, I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem with study sessions being televised. I think it, in some ways, it's still an open. In some ways, because it's study sessions are an unstructured gathering of the members of the board, and you know, may be there, or there may be another guest that's been invited. But it's a very informal setting, and sometimes that lends itself not being on television, just because of the informality that we have in a study session. Commissions are a different animal, but that's it as far as board meetings go.
I just throw out that I don't know why we couldn't look at the meeting that we're going to have, let's say special meeting, and say, let's have it on, or because it's only going to take 10 minutes. You know, we're approving a form. You know, it's going to take longer to flip the switch than it is going to take. I don't know why we can't, couldn't do that. But if it was, okay, we're having a study on X, all right, that could be done. I mean, I don't think we have to have a boilerplate, all will be. I can look at the meeting and say, should it be?
No, that
we're
sounds
not
reasonable, but
yeah, we're not.
I was looking at the scheduled meetings are already, like the second, fourth,
right,
are already
correct.
Right? I don't know of one we haven't on that one.
Yeah, we've always had.
Yeah, we've regular second and fourth Monday.
Yeah.
And then you move towards the study sessions. And then I would think that, starting out with that, I mean, I would be happy with that. And you said there's something that, obviously we got to meet at 9 o'clock, and we put an email out that said, we have to do this, guys. We have to have a meeting tomorrow. It was an emergency, or this won't occur.
Yeah.
I get that.
Yeah,
I mean,
and that like a 5-minute meeting, we just needed basically.
My point is simply to have the people of Grosse Ile, that we're telling them that we're being transparent of every issue we're going to be dealing with in a study session or a main board meeting. But what would you call these? The scheduled regular scheduled meeting, if that's the term you want to use. I mean, I'm happy with something like that. I just feel some of the important meat and potatoes that we talk about are in other meetings that nobody sees. That's all.
Jim, I take a decidedly, moderately different approach. I don't think we go far enough. When I had an opportunity to speak with Brian and Derek, I asked Brian, what's this to do a meeting? And I think, Brian, the number that you come up with is about $120 televised. I look at the number of meetings that are possible in the course of the year, and I come into excess of 100. And Brian, I know you had some numbers based on last year that are less than that, but I also, when we look at special meetings, we look at meetings for not just the board, and then special meetings of the board, but police, fire, rec, DPS, greenways, open space, special meetings they may have. Look at Airport Commerce Park, BPAC, Bicycle Pedestrian, DDA, and ZBA. I asked what are our alternatives, and when I spoke with both Brian and with Derek Thiel, I asked Brian, do we have an ability to have a commissioner or a manager or somebody that's in charge of the meeting, the chair, actually flip a switch so that we can do both live, have them also taped and archived? And the answer was, we need to look at that, do it, but we need to talk about what's available and with the equipment that we have. I asked Derek Thiel, when you were with Gibraltar, what did Gibraltar do? And Gibraltar was able to televise, and they could go live, and they could also, now they have a different structure than we do. We have more commissions and more committees than Gibraltar does. But if all we have to do is just simply have the moderator or the meeting flip a switch, I don't care whether it's 5 minutes or it's nothing. Flip the switch and put it on there. If somebody looks at it and sees a blank screen, or somebody looks at it and says, a meeting for 5 minutes at 9 o'clock in the morning, they can watch it whenever. But you can do YouTube, other social media. What's wrong with just flipping it? Right now, I understand it's costing, and I think they do a terrific job, but about $120 a meeting. I don't want to spend $10,000, $12,000, $14,000 a year when we can have somebody just switch. I think it's easy. I would like to see our manager and our deputy clerk come back at the second meeting of February. Here's the options, gentlemen and Madam Clerk. This is what you can do. So, Joe, I don't disagree with the concept. I disagree that it's not going far enough. You can do this and simply flip a switch after we have these two gentlemen take a look at it. They might come back and say, Fletcher, board, we don't need to do every one. It doesn't make sense. It's going to cost this or it's going to cost that. There's going to be a curve with each of your chairs having to come in and do this. But at the end of the day, it's not impossible. It's something done. Do I think that we need to have televised for that I sat in last week, last Tuesday, with greenways, pedestrian before that, and all the other meetings that we go to? And I've been to meetings, certainly many hundreds over the last 40 years. It's not too complicated to learn how to do this. There's a learning curve. Flip a switch and flip it off when it's done. And if somebody wants to watch the Greenways Open meeting that we had that went on last week, they can do that. If they watch ZBA, and let them do that. But I think what we should do is refer this to the township man, to the deputy clerk, to make a recommendation for us to come back to February and say, gentlemen, this, and Madam Clerk, this is what's available, this is what's possible, and then the board make the decision. I don't think we have enough info right now, but I would love to be able to hear Derek say and have him explain it to everybody in Gibraltar. And I'd like to have the deputy clerk take a look at it and say, maybe this makes sense, maybe we need to tweak it, maybe we do some meetings, but make the recommendation. And then let the people decide what they want to watch or what they don't want to watch.
I just wanted to add that right now there's only 3 commissions that aren't on TV.
Space?
No, they're on.
Quarterly though, right?
BPAC.
BPAC is quarterly.
BPAC, EA, BPAC, and Well, island beautification is not, not going to be on. And the open space. The open space are not scheduled to be on every meeting. Those are the only three. So the rest are already on TV.
I'm with Joe. I just don't think there is a good reason. And to Carl's comments about a 5-minute still a public meeting, right? There's no good reason not to broadcast meetings, right? You could, oh, we don't want to broadcast meetings because, commissioners don't want to be on TV. Well, then they shouldn't be public servants, It's all about transparency and professionalism and maximum participation of voters in the government, right?
Well, and
government is industry, right? We're here to do what industry cannot or will not do, and that big piece of that is trust. And I don't think commissions are out there doing it easy, right? The township board isn't doing anything crazy. If we don't televise a meeting, we don't want people to think we are, right? We want them to be like, you know what? I'm concerned about what the board did in December. I'm going to go to YouTube. I'm going to watch that video, and then you're going to sit there. Maybe I was concerned for nothing, or maybe I'm still concerned, but I'm not unethical, right? So we should record it. We should televise it, not just for the sake of the voters, but for the sake of the officials too, right? So they heard of the decisions they made, good, bad, or
but we
indifferent.
okay. Let's understand something. First of all, by what we're required to do is have an open meeting. All our meetings are open, so no transparency issue. There is none. They're all open. It's just a question: you want to come or not? That's what the question is. And I'm just saying that question is. I'm not saying we should or we shouldn't. Jameson, they're all open meetings. Records are kept of on here. We have our minutes. We have what we do, what we voted on, how we voted. It's all there. So it's not a question of that. It's just a question of the medium using.
Well, I think COVID changed the dynamic, right? Well, I came to meetings before to be on the township board, right? I did in 2017, 2018, 2019. People came to meeting, right? And then COVID hit, and there was no more meetings, and they had to watch online. And you know what? Watching online was pretty convenient. It's good stuff, right? I can sit on the couch, I can have some fun, I can see what's going on with the drama of the zoning board of appeals, right? Or my neighbor got the fence he wanted. People come up to me all the time in public. I was watching the meeting and I saw this, and this, and so people aren't. They're just not sitting here. They're sitting out there on the island.
Well, no, you're right. You're right. I guess I don't know. Is this the end?
No.
Everybody's clapping.
Oh, I know. I
Go
think
ahead. Yes, go ahead.
Bad joke. I want to enter this from a slightly different point of view, though. And we do televise and record. We do archive them, and they're available online. They may not always be easy for someone to find, but you can find them. They're on YouTube, they're on places. And it's good to be able to watch the meetings. And they kind of two purposes, right? So as a case, we had a meeting here for the Rec Commission, and we had a hot issue. And someone in the audience heard somebody say on a hot mic, or they were, if you look at the video, right here, I'm calling on the video now. If we didn't have the video, we couldn't have this discussion. He near the mic, he was picked up by somebody else's
You should
mic.
get near the mic.
And so, viewers hear these things and they get upset, and it creates a drama, right? But you have two things. You have the audience seeing a board interact. It doesn't have to be this board. It can be a commission, a committee, any other body. But the officials also have the public record to go back and say, here's the clip, here's what really happened. We saw today residents came up to the board and threw officials' words back at the meeting. You said this. At that meeting, you said that. Fine. I think it's good. They're paying attention. They're quoting what we say at meetings. However, if you do that at study sessions, for instance, it makes it difficult for a person in a free exchange of ideas to say something that gets recorded, and then for the next meeting, they've changed their mind. So this recording lives on where they said A, B, or C. We don't have enough daffodils at the airport. And someone can back, but you said, and you're like, yeah, but 3 weeks later said, I think we need more daffodils at the airport. We don't have enough. So this technology has a give and take with it, and we're still dealing with how to handle the technology too. That people say, that get recorded, that get used, get abused. So I think it's an excellent that we have this ability to broadcast our meetings, that we have this ability to record the meetings, but we realize it's a double-edged sword. And we realize that there are people who don't like to talk on camera as much as I do, but once you get used to it, it's easy. So our public officials, if they serve on the DDA, they should get comfortable with the idea that, televised, and people need to hear what you're saying because you're representing them in some capacity, right? So I think it's an idea to use the technology. Personally, I like having these sessions without television because we tend to have a freer of ideas because we don't take minutes at study sessions. There's no taking place. You're not really building consensus. You're talking. You're not taking a vote. So it leaves everything kind of open-ended. I don't know if the school board videotapes their study sessions. I know that they do their reggings.
Yeah,
So
they don't do their study
they
session.
don't do their study sessions. So meetings, you're taking a vote, right? When you have a special meeting, you're taking a vote that should be televised, whether it's 5 minutes or 40 minutes. When you do take a vote, it's important that people see and hear how we're voting and why we're voting and so forth. So just some things to note. My last point is regarding what it costs to tape a meeting. We have the argument of quantity versus quality. If you just teach a manager how to flick the switch, you're going to have one camera over that's going to show a panel of 9 people, and unless we all learn how to use the mics, you're not going to really know who's talking. We have people in the control room like Lori and Mike. They kiss in on the speaker. When Joe, you're at that end of the dais, but when you're speaking, that camera is on you and you're talking to the audience, which is something that you also, if the camera were just on the middle, you would best see people sitting in the middle. So I think you would decide there are some meetings, township board meeting, a planning commission meeting, certain kinds of meetings, we think we need to have the human touch. We need to have the people in the control room. And there may be other meetings on a smaller scale, or maybe work them into a different room or whatever, where maybe just flicking the switch adequate. But I would hate in our calculus, in our kitchen, to lose that touch, because when you're watching TV and you see an individual speaking, it's more moving to you, more to you. And my very last thing is, I love the Zoom meeting. I would go back to Zoom meetings in a heartbeat. We had a lot of people participate. Sometimes we had up to 100 on a township board Zoom meeting, and all in our little square. But we can keep an eye on each other, and you can move back and forth, all able to also be present, even if you're not in, per se. That was possible for us. So it's a technology that, my God, how lucky we were to have it. And we had some pretty tough times because we had the Zoom meeting. So another might be to do smaller group meetings via Zoom.
But we can't.
You can't do it anymore.
We can't
Right,
do
that's
Zoom
right.
anymore. That's it just, we don't have that.
Sorry.
I know, sorry. Are you done?
Have a voice anymore.
Well, no, I mean, first, in general, so I always try to remember what it was like before. I follow it a lot through the video. So in general, I'm just supportive of the more that we can find to be able to watch, the better. There's a nifty trick on YouTube that I'll tell you all where you can back speed, so you don't have to sit there for 2 hours. You can actually turn it into an hour and a half or an hour if you go a little bit quicker. And then as I'm on the board, I actually watch televised just to make sure I'm doing my job, make sure I'm doing it. I want to add to what Ute said. Mike, they do a very important service in what she just said. Almost every meeting button says, turn on your mic, so that's important. Otherwise, you don't catch the audio. I'm getting involved in stuff. I learned a lot of names. He puts chirons under everyone as they speak. So speaking, because you can't really see the name tags here, and so I learned people's names that way. I'm not saying that they should be at every meeting, so I'm really grateful to hear you, Spud, talk about other options. And yeah, I think if I'll volunteer as the board tech person, and Derek can't be here, I'll learn how to flip the switch. And there's other parts of it too that Brian does that we gotta talk about, which is that he makes sure it gets on YouTube, gets the right thing. Cleaning is there's a whole bunch of other elements to it. But what I was going to come here and propose is we've been meeting monthly. I guess we're going to go back to twice monthly now. But whenever we do sessions at the twice monthly mark, I was going to suggest at least broadcasting those. But if we can, if there's special meetings, that bridge meeting, I know we eventually broadcast, but it was a little wonky how those are things we should broadcast. And yeah, the commissions, the more that we can get, the better. I was going to say, I feel is an important one. I'm not Pollyannish. I know it won't fix everything, but I saw a lot of confusion around art, some of this, some of that. I think having the meetings publicized would help. I think Supervisor Budney, if I may, said, who do you do this for? Let's be generous. 100 people, maybe a meeting if we're lucky. But I've seen many times where one person that watches it will then tell someone else, this is what they said at this meeting, and spreads good information out there. So those are the people that I think you want to do it for, and it's just helpful. I've been looking at minutes too when meetings aren't broadcast. They just don't capture as well as a video.
Well, yeah, and minutes are not supposed to be a play-by-play bite of every word. So yeah, they aren't.
I'll use minutes when I have in the video. It just makes a big difference. And so anyway, that's where I'm at.
Okay, how about this? We've had a good discussion. We come back at our next meeting and just kind of recap and see, because it could be, should we do the study session, shouldn't we? Or should it be some study sessions we do? For instance, the study session we have on budget would certainly think would be one that wouldn't be bad putting it on TV versus something else where we're just starting talking about it and spitballing and really going in no direction. We're just trying to other something that may not, but we can just how do we want to do this? As to the other ones, the openings, the three commissions that are not, we certainly can slate them to a day that they are here. If that's what we do, and of the three, probably DDA is one that everybody wants to see. We have that, just to show you, we have the boardroom for that night. Everybody just, because we aren't mandated to be on, they like to hold it in a conference room, and that's where we normally do it. That's available. We have our day, we have our room. We can do that, and those we do the flip the switch. That's the other thing that really needs to be, okay, which ones do we flip the switch? Which ones do we have Mike and Lori? So I would ask the board to think about that. and let's see, come back at the next meeting. Put
Derek and Brian.
well, they probably, yeah, they can do that. We pretty much know what they're, I mean, there's nothing for them to do. But we can craft an item. Good enough?
Good.
All right. With that, I'll end the discussion period and go to the reports. Madam Clerk.
A voice left. So according to Deputy Clerk Brian Friel, all is quiet on the election front. But if you are a new voter to Grosse Ile, either just turned 18 or just moved to the island, make come down to the clerk's office and register to vote. If you're interested in our election inspector team, we're always looking for volunteers and old. Again, please give our team a call and sign up. We have some elections coming up, smaller ones, not the big ones. So it's a good learning opportunity and a good way to keep your hands in. I also wanted to say that in accordance with our new policy procedures manual, the clerk's office is working with commission chairs and department heads and commissioners, kind of along the same lines as what we've been taught, to educate our commission chairs, our managers on more standardized meeting format, agenda format. And I know each commission has a different workload, different things that are their priorities. So if you need to tweak the examples that you were given, the templates you were given, Brian says give them a call. And I think the whole point is just simply we want to make sure that every committee does the same things in nearly routine, so that when you do watch the meetings broadcast, and so kind of know where you're at, and that we're all on the same page. And then I think that is it for the clerk's report.
Your voice held out.
Yeah, way to go.
Thank you. Treasurer's report.
Thank you. For November, Grosse Ile Township had a total investments of $10,600,000, which stated $15,047 in investment at an average interest rate of 2.32%. I just want to add the final numbers for December haven't been completely put together yet at the year end, but our invested assets for the month of December was 4.265%. So we're moving in the right direction on that. Winter tax bills are out. Payment is due by February 14th. And as of last week, we collected 50.8% of the total winter tax bill, keeping in mind that out for a month. Any distribution that had to be made were sent to Grosse Ile Township schools and money. And again, pet licenses available for 2023 at the Treasurer's Cashier's Office for $6. Treasurer's report. There will be no meeting for DPS in Murray, and our next meeting is February 14th at 7. And our next Commerce Park meeting is normally on the 30th, which would have been next Monday, the 16th. That's being held the following day, the 17th, because of the Martin Luther King holiday on 16th. and that's at 6 o'clock. And that's my report.
Thank you. Trustees reports. Mr. Porcarelli.
Evening. I sit on the Police Commission. We meet the third Tuesday of each month in this room at 7 o'clock. In our last meeting, we went over a couple things. Doug Carmack, our police chief, if they could look into a feasibility study to help the longevity of the county bridge. One was for our own department to be a couple of individuals be certified in the motor area. And I know that I was told, I'm not sure if this is still the same thing, but there's 1 or 2 motor carriers for all of Wayne County in the county, and they don't get to us very often. So anyway, he's going to look at the feasibility of that. Be certified again. There's some cost to that. There's no doubt about it. The vehicle, scales, so on and so forth. But we're going to see what that comes up with. Also, we were talking about this, Jim. I know that you said last time, or Derek, I'm not sure if one of you update on asking the county on.
No, I don't have response from them on that.
Okay.
And I do have them on my follow up.
So the next thing is on the police commission. We've just been going over budget issues. Obviously, as you can see, and probably have heard, there's a few budget at the police department, and going into 23-24 budget year. So we've been meeting on that also, and then the township, obviously name. So that's it for my report tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. James.
All right. Good evening. So we discussed previously budget reconciliation. So I know the school year is coming to the end for the township on March 31st. We received some audit support, and they told us one of the things we had to do was file our budget, or amend the budget to match expenditures by the end of the year. I don't feel like we ever got to a consensus on that. Are we doing that? I know we talked about it, but there wasn't a...
You mean as far as a meeting for us?
Like
yeah.
March meetings were, well, not just budget meetings, but meetings where we'll reconcile the L22 budget before moving it.
We will do that, yes. We'll make sure that we want to have it separately so nobody gets it mixed in with a new budget or budget that this is what we're talking about, this is what we're ending with, here's what we would adjust.
Okay, great. So I sit on the bicycle pedestrian committee. So we've been working on something. It started with Brian Pollock and Carl working on this for several years. The Belleville connector. We're closer to that than ever before. We're starting to try to build some consensus to be able to get that done. And what that would do is create not a bike path, sidewalk going from Meridian Road to West River Road, Belleville, adjacent to the golf courses and Water's Edge. Bellevue. Sorry, I've been saying Belleville. My apologies. The Bellevue. We've expanded the whole project. Okay. The Bellevue. Okay. So, which should be a great thing for the community and for the pedestrians, people that ride bike and walk, and I know there's a ton of people that do that. So that brought along. The Zoning Board of Appeal does not currently have a meeting scheduled for January, but we may. Those are as needed. And then I saw a report that, I don't know if I saw an email about this. Representative Dingell's office had earmarked $0.5 million to assist with our wastewater treatment plant, so that's news.
I am going to mention that.
Okay, all right. I just look forward to relieving some of the tax burden on the residents for that. So, and that concludes my report.
Jameson. Carl?
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I sit on the Open Space Committee, and the township has previously did a surplusage of land that was to be sold or at least put up for sale. And Greenways Open Space met and reviewed some that were on the block or will be on the block, as well as some that Brooke McNee had determined had value in terms of what could be done with those. And members of the committee met the Friday before New Year. We walked through some of the properties. The chair, myself, and the committee had a meeting with Township Manager Heil last week and doing together what he expects will be a market analysis, some key as to what those properties are worth. And we look forward to hearing back from him, make a formal presentation to the board. And I'm anticipating that'll be done next couple of weeks. And then we can ask the board to review. I'm interested in selling that property to the Greenways Open Space. And we're going to go from there as far as Derek's involvement is coming arm's length, common sense price on that. And that is the that I have regarding Greenways Open Space. Again, we meet on the first of each month. And all are welcome, 7 o'clock in this room. I am asking the supervisor for his indulgence in a moment. There have been comments that were made tonight about comments that I made that apparently were misunderstood previously. Not against having that 24th police position. My comment is, and my thoughts have been, that while the first responders 95% of the time, the primarily trained and have some training in medical emergency responses, but at the end of the day, it's the approximately 20 firefighters on this department that are well trained to provide medical service. I have had members of my family, I have had neighbors, and I have that have received excellent care and treatment as a result of the responses. But at the end of the day, it is the fire department are the ones, the men and women, that come out there and make the difference. Other communities program where they will provide for police to respond and clear a path so that the firefighters can then come in and start rendering these services. That's not what we do. And kind of ironic, we have Supervisor Loftus in the audience, and Brian and I had occasions to speak about the business model that Grosse Ile uses. Brian had indicated that he had gone to a number of meetings over our conversations around the state where people look at it and say, you have a model that combines fire and police in terms of first emergency responders for medical treatment and care. And you said, yeah. And you've told me a number of times other communities scratch their head and say, how do you manage to? At the end of the day, it is the medical provider that come in and make the initial assessment, and they're going to provide the contact information going to the various hospitals that are available. But at the end of the day, if you're looking at spending $20,000 on an officer, or perhaps bringing on board more firefighters, that's what my argument is, and that's coming from is what makes more sense. We don't have a crime problem on Grosse Ile in the sense that we're being overrun by all kinds of gang activities. Our problem is responding to the health and medical needs of the city. And the most logical place for something like that is to look at what we can do with the department. I think that the police do a tremendous job here. But put a man or woman in a car on the midnight shift when they are trained and educated to prevent crime or to solve crimes makes a lot if there's criminal activity here. But Brian, if I'm wrong, let me know what your thoughts are on that or anyone else, because I look at this as not a police per se, but as a healthcare problem. And I'm recalling at one point, there was a firefighter within a half a mile of every home on Grosse Ile. And it's the firefighters that respond. You one that goes to public safety and grabs the ambulance, but you have other firefighters that are running to the homes or the businesses and are first responders that are able to give advanced life support and healthcare treatment. You have that third or fourth or fifth or sixth car on the road, the police vehicle, that's great for crime, but my concern, feelings, and my argument is that doesn't make it a safer community for health. And Brian, if I'm wrong on anything, please correct me.
Well,
Carl,
you're
just
not.
a technicality, they cannot provide advanced life support services.
I agree. That's my point.
Talking about the firemen.
You said
the
fire
firemen
provides
can't.
ALS is a technical type of service provided by EMS services. Our firefighters are medical first responders.
When you call for assistance, and I hope you never have to, I have, but when you call for assistance and you're looking for someone to stop a B&E or to help you solve a crime where you've had property stolen, you call the police department. When you're looking for somebody to provide first medical response, you're looking
No,
for the fire
I
department.
agree. I was just saying
That's my
ALS is a specific type of medical service,
But
and I don't
that's
want
my-
to confuse
ALS is
residents. and-
paramedics.
That's my
Right.
point.
Right.
That's my point. When you want medical and health care, and we're blessed with a wonderful system, a business model that I think, frankly, should be the envy of most of the other communities, not just downriver, but throughout the state. When I look at that, that's what I'm looking for. If I need help solving a crime, I'm going to call a police officer, expect a police officer to come in. If I am looking at help for some kind of a medical emergency, I'm looking for the fire department.
Sorry, go ahead.
Are you done?
That concludes my
That
report.
concludes, thank you. Kyle.
Yes. I sit on the Planning Commission, which meets on an as-needed basis. It has not met since I last spoke to you all. But I did want to wish everyone a happy 2023. Hope everyone had a good holiday season. And I wanted to especially thank the rec department. I have a 3-year-old and a 7-month-old, so my 3-year-old's just kind of now starting to understand what the holidays are and what they mean. And he had a really good time at both Island Glow and at the Santa event over on Centennial Farms. And I also want to especially shout out the Albright Family Light Show. I don't know if folks have gone by and seen that. That's not a township thing, but there's a family that just puts on an incredible light show and music show along West River Road. And yeah, I'm sure it's some inconvenience for having the cars there and people realizing that, but it's just a really incredible show that I think adds to the holiday season. So it's just a really special place to spend the holidays. And I know I'm grateful to be here and wanted to put that out there. I don't want to steal Supervisor Budney's or Manager Thiel's thunder on the 3.5 million, but that was very, very good news. That felt like a special Christmas present, not just for this year, but for everything that we've been through over the long time. I was really grateful for that. And then finally, on the televising issue, I was really heartened to hear where a lot of the board members were, and that we have a chance of televising more. That made me feel very good. And I've felt from the beginning, this has been a conversation I think the whole time I've been on the board, that this isn't just about the televising, you know. And I heard you talk about transparency, Jim, and that there is transparency. I think the tough thing with transparency is when you talk about transparency, it's not really about that. It's about trust and honesty, you know. And I've got to say, like, I hear all these different people speak every night, and so many times I feel the different perspectives that everyone has, and I don't feel like there's animus really, or not animus. I don't feel like there's people trying to be dishonest. I just think there's different perspectives, and people often don't listen to each other, and that's the hard part, is figuring out how we listen to each other, build trust. If I may say, it was interesting to have both Supervisor Loftus here and Bob Z, who I think isn't here now, because I think that's been going back years, and so you had kind of the most concise argument back and forth that still has not been figured out, you know. And so that's the part. There's these things go back years, and there's relationships that have been broken for a long time, and that's where, when people talk about transparency, is the hard part of fixing, you know. And so I'm not saying there's a fix to it necessarily, but I do want to shout out the residents that do the small things that I do think helps build trust and honesty. Whether and I want to call out Code Red. Actually, Code Red has done a really important job and work in terms of informing people. I see all the time people saying, "What about trash pickup?" And then someone will forward a Code Red alert, you know. And you know, those are small things, but that's a really big part of transparency to me. It's not just us putting all the information out there, but it's how that information is then used, communicated to people, and residents have a huge role to play in that. So if you've ever been a resident, seen a Code Red alert, or watched a meeting and spread on good information to other people, you're a part of that transparency and building that trust and honesty, I feel. So that's for me the core of what this conversation is about and what I want to encourage people to work on. And yeah, I'll leave it at that for tonight. Happy 2023, everyone, and looking forward to hearing the rest of the reports tonight.
Thank you, Kyle.
Mr.
Eric.
Supervisor and board members, just a couple of quick items tonight. Just wanted to let the residents know the contractor for DT that's doing the tree trimming is back on the island. They took a hiatus right around the Christmas holiday and pretty much through the month of December, but they are back and they're starting at the north end of the island and moving south. So, and they should be here for about another 2 months doing the tree trimming that they had started this past fall. So just look for them if they're in your neighborhood. They're generally providing you contact information if you have any issues with the trimming that they're doing or any concerns. They'll usually get a hold of you and provide a phone number for you to call. If you have any other problems, feel free to call Township Hall and we'll try to facilitate that conversation.
All right, just question on that quickly. We had that major windstorm, obviously, and I feel like we had a lot less power outages, partly because of the work that was done. So I just wanted to thank everyone that's done that, because I know there was issues. People were saying this tree got trimmed when it shouldn't have, but I was like, wow, I'm glad I have power during this horrible winter storm. I was out for days before at times, so I was grateful for that.
The tree trimming is coming at a significant cost to DT. So obviously, if they didn't think it wasn't. If they didn't think it was worthwhile, I'm sure they wouldn't be undertaking that. But my understanding is something around the lines of 70% of their outages are tree related. So I think they've pinpointed that as a major cause for reliability, and they're going through the process of addressing that. And I would agree with you. That huge windstorm, I think I live on the south end of the island, and I was happy that they had already gone through there, and we didn't experience any power outages, and I'm sure that definitely helped. So anyways, just so the residents are aware of that. Speaking to DTE, the contractor that's doing the line service, the under canal or under river work with pulling a line over from Trenton, they're going to be pulling the pipe underneath the Trenton Channel starting next week. That's the pipe that's run along Bellevue, so they'll be starting to pull that underneath through the bore that they have completed over the past month or so. So what that means,
I think it's Ruthmere.
but the pipe being strung along Bellevue, that's required Bellevue to be closed to through traffic. That should be out of there by the end of the month. So we hope that Bellevue will be reopened from basically West River Road to Meridian once that pipe has been pulled and it's underneath the channel. So just to let residents know, that should be reopening here by hopefully the end of January. People on the north end of the island have been receiving notices regarding the cross-connection survey. A third round of notices is going out this week to the north end of the island. And actually, we've gotten a pretty good response, especially from the second notice that was sent out. I think we've had about 500 responses, which is right around like 45-50%, which is actually really, really good. So better than we anticipated. So wanted to thank the residents that have responded to those surveys. And if you get a third notice in the mail, it is legitimate. It is a contractor working for the township. It has the township logo on it, and it's not something that's spam or whatever. It's actually a legitimate notice. And do your best to answer the survey if you don't mind, and that helps us all out with trying to make sure that our water system is safe and that we're being efficient with regards to inventorying the system so we know exactly where the risks might lie. Safeway, which is the contractor doing the sanitary sewer investigation, TVing, and cleaning that we kind of talked about earlier, they're working right around the Waterman area, right along the canal. So if you have a contractor that comes to your door that says that they're doing some TV and cleaning work for the township, and they might want to go in your rear yard to take a look at a manhole or run a pipe back there or something like that to clean it, that is a legitimate contractor. But if there is any concern, feel free to call Township Hall, and we can confirm that to make sure that's not something that is going on that has a nefarious purpose or something along those lines. Spalding DeDecker is doing survey work on the ferry bridge. So if you see a contractor out there doing work, they have started to do their planning with the replacement of that bridge. So surveying crews are out there doing that work currently. And then last but not least, Martin Luther King Day is next Monday, so Township Hall will be closed. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thanks, Derek. I just have a few small comments. First and foremost, Happy New Year to everybody. I echo what Kyle said. I hope everybody had a nice holiday. And along that line, Kyle, I'm glad you enjoyed Island Glow, but that's a DDA event, not a rec event. And since I sit on DDA, I have to do that for them. But I'm glad you enjoyed it. Speaking of DDA, our next DDA meeting, it meets on the fourth Thursday, which in this month it'll be the 26th, and that'll be our next meeting. We meet at 6:30. There was some comments made today by some people regarding police officers, and I just want to let people know the board does not set or solve the problem for the department. The department comes to us and says, here's what our problem is, and here's how here's how we'd like to take care of it. And if that's a millage, they come and they say, we'd like to have a millage for X or whatever. We're waiting to hear. We know they have a problem. We're waiting to hear from them. That's the way the system works. So it's not us. It's not us. We're talking to the police constantly with all our departments, but they're the ones that have to figure out the decision on their problem, not us. That's the way the system works. The one other thing that I wanted to mention, we talked about our wastewater treatment plant and other projects. And Derek, correct me if I'm wrong, but when we spoke of that project, in total, we were talking around $10 million.
Correct, yes.
Because of the appropriation that we're getting, which is actually, it's a little, just a tad less than 3.5 million. We obviously won't have to go for the 10. The people will only have to do the 7. So it is going to be a big help to us. I would also say that Derek and I worked on that and asked for that appropriation way ahead of us even going out for that millage. And that's the way we approach everything. It's not just going to the people and saying, we want money. We went out for that millage because we hadn't heard anything and we knew we have to do this project. So we had to make sure we were going to have enough money. Thus, we went out for the millage that we went out for and for the amount of money. But we're always looking to the federal government, which in this case, this money's coming from the feds. We're always looking for that. We're always looking for that partner from the county, from whoever. In fact, it seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, that we also asked the county for some money for this project and put in for it, and we just haven't ever heard anything on it, and that's the way those things go.
Yeah, we when we went through trying to figure out the best way to finance the work that was required, the state required us to do at the wastewater treatment plant. We turned over a lot of different rocks trying to figure out what options existed or any opportunities that might be out there to subsidize or reduce, the overall taxpayers, Grosse Ile taxpayers' costs by bringing alternative sources of revenue. And we kind of casted a wide net, and this is one that hit, and it's a significant one. So it's a great thing for the community, and at the end of the day, we'll end up reducing the amount that we have to levy as far as the millage amount. So and that's a direct cost savings to the taxpayer here, Grosse Ile taxpayer.
So it is. It's something we always. Our roads. We're still talking to the county, asking them for more. The more we can get from them, the less you're going to have to pay, and so it's not just a one and done. We continue to try and work these things and bring that cost down. That's it. That's the end of my comments. So I would.
Motion to adjourn.
Wow. I wish we got, I wish, we have an action item. I get no support for the action item, but we have it for this. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you very much.
I thought we voted, sorry. I was on my way out.